Hey everyone, I'm Liz Ferry and today I'm continuing my realistically shaped muscular crochet doll. This is part 2 of the tutorial. Find a link to part 1 in the description. So let's continue where we left off in part 1. Next I'm going to shape the rear of the doll. This part is optional. If you don't want to do this, you could just single crochet normally for a few rows until you get the length you want for the body before creating the legs. But I'm going to increase at the back of the work for a few rows to give the doll a more realistic shape. How many times you increase at the back depends on how big you want the doll's rear to be. I'm going to make mine pretty large, so I'll increase 3 times per side at the back of the work. And I'm going to go on for 3 rows until the body reaches the right width. Alright, I've finished my 6 increases at the back for 3 rows. Next I'm going to finish the rear while at the same time increasing the middle front to shape the crotch. At the back of the work, I'm going to decrease 3 times per side, since I increased 3 times per side when I was widening the rear. Keep on decreasing until you reach the width you want for the top of both legs. I'm going to decrease the back for 2 rows so that I can make the legs fairly wide. At the same time, I'm going to increase 3 times at the middle front for a row. Then decrease 3 times at the middle front for a row to shape the crotch. So for row 1 of this step, I decreased 3 times per side at the back of the body, and increased 3 at the middle front of the body. For row 2 of this step, I decreased 3 per side again at the back of the body, and decreased 3 at the middle front of the body. Then I'm going to fold in the middle at the back to give the doll a more realistic shape. Before I make the legs, I'm going to actually set the work aside to create the arms. If you want to, though, you could wait until you're finished with the body to make the arms. To make the arms, I'll use the other end of the same yarn. I've started the arm the same way I started the head, with a magic circle with 6 stitches of single crochet. Then I increased the hand for 1 row, the same way I increased the top of the head 6 times in the row. If you want to keep making the hand bigger, increase the same way we increased for the head. I'm just going to increase for 1 row. Next, I single crocheted for 2 more rows until I got to where I want to place the wrist. To create the wrist, I decreased 1 time per side per row to narrow the hand. For my doll, I decreased for 2 rows. Then I increased 1 time per side for 2 rows to widen the wrist for the forearm. For my doll, I increased for 2 rows since I decreased for 2 rows to start the wrist. To create the forearm, I'll single crochet normally for 2 rows, then increase 1 time for 1 row to gradually widen the arm. Repeat that until the forearm reaches the desired length. For my doll, I did 2 rows of normal single crochet, then I increased for 1 row. Then I single crocheted for 2 more rows, then I increased for 1 more row. To create the elbow, I'm going to decrease 1 time per side per row until I get to the width I want the elbow to be, just like I did at the wrist. For my doll, I decreased for 2 rows. Then to finish the elbow, increase 1 time per side per row until you get the width you want for the bottom of the upper arm. For my doll, I increased for 2 rows since I decreased for 2 rows to start the elbow. And then I'm going to gradually increase the upper arm the same way I did for the forearm. Single crochet normally for 2 rows, then increase 1 time for 1 row to gradually widen the upper arm. Repeat that until the upper arm reaches the desired width. For my doll, I did 2 rows of normal single crochet, then I increased for 1 row. If you still want the arm to be longer after you reach a width you like, continue to add more rows of single crochet until the upper arm reaches a length you like. For my doll, I'm going to single crochet for 4 more rows. To end my doll's arm, I'm going to decrease 1 time per side for a row until the width of the doll's arm is about the same as the armhole on the body. If the width of the upper arm is already the same, you can skip this step. Then to end the arm, at the end of the row of decrease, I'm going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the row, cut off a long tail of yarn, and use the tail to sew the arm to the armhole later. Then repeat the same thing to make another arm for the other side. Before I finish making the doll, I'm going to make a wire skeleton and add it to the doll's body. You can find my wire skeleton tutorial at the link in the description. For this doll, I made a skeleton with a 6-inch neck and spine, a 14-inch arm span with each arm being 7 inches long, placed 2.5 inches down from the top of the neck. And each leg being 8 inches long. After putting the skeleton in the doll, I realized that I made the legs of the skeleton too short, so I had to add an extra inch to the ends later. If you don't want the doll's ankles to be posable, then you don't have to worry about the legs of the skeleton being too short. But I want the doll's ankles posable, so I'll go ahead and add that extra inch to each leg. If you want to make the doll's ankles posable, don't do what I did, just make skeleton's legs long enough to begin with. If you're not sure how long the doll's legs will be, just eyeball it, and make them a bit longer if necessary. Too long is better than too short in this case. To add the skeleton, I'm going to bend the arms of the skeleton up, place each arm through each armhole, and pull the doll's body onto the skeleton like a shirt. Then push the neck of the skeleton into the doll's head. Once I've added the skeleton, I'm going to add some fiber fill to the body. And then I'll place the arms I just made over the skeleton's arms and add some fiber fill to those arms. I'm using this dowel stick to push the fiber fill into place. Next, sew the tops of each arms to the holes of each armhole. If you want to, though, you could wait until you're finished with the body to make the arms. It's up to you. At this point, the middle back stitch should be at the first stitch of the row. If it's not, go ahead and single crochet until you reach the stitch at the very middle of the back. For my doll, I needed to single crochet 3 more in order to be at the exact middle back of the row. Or if your first stitch is after the middle back stitch, you could undo some stitches instead. Just make sure not to undo any increases or decreases. If you need to, you can move the decreases over a stitch. Or if your first stitch is closer to the middle front, you could start the legs there instead. Just make sure you start at the middle. If you want to, you could use some yarn of the same color to outline the shape of the doll's muscles. This is entirely optional. The muscles look fine on their own in person, but they don't look very clear on the camera, so I'm going to outline mine, but I'll wait until I'm finished making the entire doll to do that. If you want to see how I outline the muscles in more detail, I made a separate video where you can see everything I do to outline the shapes of each muscle. You can find a link to that video in the description. Now we're almost done, but let's finish this guy in the next video. If you liked this part, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next part. I'll see you all there, bye!